Good evening, friends. This is Melody Ringo again from North Galveston County. I made it to video number 5. Yay! Um, it's about almost 5 minutes till 10 here, and I'm trying to get this done. I've had trouble with my computer or Facebook recognizing my camera for some reason. But tonight I wanted to tell a quick story. I call it my act as if story, and it has a little twist to it called the ripple effect. As well, let me just give you a little bit of history here. I just retired from a 20-year career working under contract to NASA for a world-class aerospace company here in Houston, and I supported the International Space Station for that entire 20 years. So over my career, I ended up kind of hopping around from team to team and position to position, doing a large variety of things. But for the most part, I was on technical teams, working with engineers and supporting them. But 3 of the years that I worked there, I was on the communications team, which is what I started out thinking is, where I belonged. That didn't turn out to be the case, but that's a story within itself. But my point is that I was working on the communications team. It was a very small team, and I was supporting primarily the community relations and space education, kind of the STEM, science, technology, mathematics, and so forth, and outreach to the community, supporting engineers who went out to classrooms and gave talks about the space station and that sort of thing. And I also served on the community, the Employee Community Fund Board during that 3-year period. And I learned a lot, and I really, there were aspects of the job that I really enjoyed and others that I didn't. But at the end of that 3 years, word came down from the corporate office that everybody who served in my position across the country was being given a pink slip. They were downsizing, and they were wanting to, cut back on the amount of money they were spending. So unfortunately, one day my boss, who was a sweet Christian man, called me into the office, and I could tell that he didn't have good news. He had his head hung, and he was a wonderful person. I just really enjoyed working for him. He was the government relations person for the Boeing Houston office, kind of a liaison to Washington, D.C. So I go into his office and I sit down, and he says, "Melody, I hate to tell you this, but they're eliminating your position and all of the people who are at your level. Corporate is doing away with all of those jobs. So unfortunately, I'm here to give you your 60-day notice that you're being laid off." And for most people, if they get that kind of news, it's just absolutely devastating. And there was a fleeting thought in my mind about that, but for the most part, I've lived on very little for most of my life, and so my thought immediately went to who my source actually is, and it was not that company, and it was not NASA. It's my Heavenly Father. He's the one who provides for me. And so that's what came out of my mouth. I said to my boss, "Well, don't worry about it." I said, I recognize that this company is not my source anyway. Hi, Christina, Anna, Landra. I'm not really good at looking at the notes while I'm talking. But anyway, so I said, don't worry about it. You know, you and I both know, because he was a believer as well, that, you know, who our source really is. And after I walked out of his office, you know, I guess for the next couple of days, I kind of took some time to process everything. And yeah, there was a bit of fear there. But my husband and I live very frugally. We save a lot and we spend very little. So I wasn't too concerned about the money part. But as I was praying about it and asking the Lord, you know, Lord, what do you have for me? I mean, this job is ending. What else do you want me to do? And he said to me, just as clear as day in my spirit, he said, Melody, I want you to act as if you're not being laid off. I was like, wow, okay. What does that look like? I've never been laid off from a job, so I didn't even have anything to compare it with. And so immediately I got this sense in my spirit, well, it looks like this. When you're at work for the next 60 days, as it counts down, you know, you hold your shoulders high, hold your head high, make eye contact with people, and smile as if you're not losing your job. And so that's what I did. Meanwhile, I did apply for, you know, some other positions within the company because I really didn't want to have to go outside of the company at that time. So the 60 days counted down, and, you know, it got a little nerve-wracking there toward the end. But just a few days before the 60-day deadline was going to be there, I got word from HR that they wanted to meet with me that Friday. So I thought, okay, well, I don't know what that's about, but whatever, you know. So when Friday rolled around, I walked into my boss's office, and there were two HR ladies sitting there, and they were looking at me like I was from another planet. And they said, you're not going to believe this, but we have another job offer for you, and it just opened up today. Now, this was the last day of my 60-day period, okay? And they just looked at me, waiting for me to respond. And I just pointed, and I said, well, I do have friends in high places, and kind of laughed about it. And they were just sitting there like, what do you mean by that? Anyway, so the very day that I was to be laid off became the first day of my job in the new position on the new team. I was going from communications team back to engineering and technical stuff. So they said to me, do you know how often this happens? And I just kind of shrugged my shoulders like I don't have a clue. And they said, never. It never happens like this, that the timing is so perfect. And so that morning I spent my time packing up my boxes and packing up my cubicle, and during the lunch hour I moved over to the other building, and in the afternoon I set my whole new, you know, cubicle up there. And it's a big deal for me because I always decorate my cubicle. I always did decorate them as if I lived there. People were always joking with me because I had lamps and posters, and I said, well, I spend so much time here, you know, it's got to feel like a miniature home, or I'm not going to feel comfortable. But so that's the act as if story. It's a matter of, you know, having faith, and when bad news comes your way, don't panic. Don't freak out. Seek guidance. Just take a step back, take a deep breath, and ask for guidance. And peace came over me after I did that. Like I said, the first couple of days it was a little bit rough after I got the news, but after that, it was total peace. And it was me, shoulders high, head high, smiling, interacting with people, believing that what God told me was true. And he didn't fail me. Okay, so that's the act as if part. The ripple effect part was that about 2 or 3 months later, the same boss that had just had to lay me off was given his notice. And I went in to talk to him one day because we had become friends over the 3 years that I worked for him. And he said to me, just point blank, he said, Melody, you know what? I would have normally, under normal circumstances, I would have just panicked about this, because he had a large family, 4 children and a wife and a nice home and, all of that. He said, normally I would have just panicked and flipped out. But he said, I watched how you did. And I heard your story about, act as if you're not being laid off. And I saw that miracle that happened where you got your new job on the same day, the last day of your old job. And he said, I'm going to do the same thing. So he did. And he ended up getting a job with another aerospace company, one of our competitors, and very well paying job, better paid than what he had with the company that we both started out with. And now he is a government liaison for that company in Washington, D.C., and he's doing just fine. So I tell this story because I think that it has, a lesson in it for all of us. And I still have to, learn. I still have to follow these steps myself when disaster happens. And I've dealt with a lot of hardship and a lot of difficult situations in my life. But the one thing that has saved me through all of that is just having faith, and believing that when God tells you something, he doesn't lie. So believe it and act on it, and miracles will happen for you. That's all I have for tonight, folks. I'm tired. It's been a long day. I'm ready to go relax with my husband now and my cat. So, somebody asked me how long ago this happened. This was in 2006. And I went to that new team. The job that I got, the new job, lasted until I retired last year. So I was there for 10 years. And it was the best job. The last job ended up being the best job I'd ever had at that company. And I had the best manager and the best team that I had ever worked for. So it turned out to be a wonderful experience, even though it started out sounding like it was going to be a disaster, And I learned from that personally that God never really intended for me. He intended for me to be in the communications team for the amount of time that I was there, but he didn't intend for me to make a career out of that there. But I did learn a lot while I was there. So then I was able to take those skills and apply them in other, in my new job and in life in general. So anyway, y'all have a wonderful night. I'm going to go get some well-deserved rest because I've been wrestling with computer problems and technical issues and my camera, and the phone keeps ringing, and my cat wants me. So I got to go. But I love y'all so much. And I'm going to stay in touch on this page even after tonight. Now, tomorrow I've got something to do, but later in the week, I'll be back and interacting with everybody. I just can't let go of this group. I love y'all so much. Have a good night.